All right. So, where did the story of The Last Lamia begin for you?
I think it began when I realized that I wanted to write a story, but I wanted it to be in a different medium. It's always been kind of a dream of mine to see my writing turned into like a show or a movie. Definitely choosing to have it be a web series I don't regret it for a second.
Ashton pitched me the series, and it immediately caught my attention at its potential. It was just such a simple story in the way that so many things are not. So many things are overly complicated, but the core of what The Last Lamia was, this story between Jason and Amali, the story just immediately lit up my imagination. And I just remember Ashton and I would spend a lot of time just going back and forth about how we pictured the story. And that ebb and flow, that going back and forth, resulted in the story that ended up going on screen.
Most humans don't feel as strongly about it as I do.
I would say that it would definitely be the longevity of working on a miniseries. And it's not a one-off, so you get time to be able to grow with your character. You get to mold the voice to the character a little bit more than you would than a one-shot, one-chapter story. I was able to figure out how I felt Amali should sound by how the story progressed and make sure that her voice fits with the story that is attached to her, instead of just coming up with a voice that fits a character's most shallow aspects. So it's like, oh, they're bratty, so we can throw on a bratty voice, and there's not much thought that goes in behind that.
I suppose it was my first time doing voice acting and stuff, because like I've done acting before and everything, but I just remember messaging you and just going like, hey, I noticed you have a new series, like if you need an extra voice, let me know. Here's me thinking like, hey, I'll voice some background character if you want, just for the hell of it. And you were like, cool. You're voicing this character called the Light, who ends up becoming one of the central reoccurring characters. I'm like, oh, okay.
If there was one moment that was my favorite of his, it was when Amali was digging around through his head and she stumbled upon, not a memory, but like an image of his mom. And I quite like that moment where he kind of, without explanation, just kind of bursts out and wants her out of his head, because the memory of his own mother is very painful.
I try to find some sort of common ground with her. I mean, obviously she has some deep-rooted issues that I hope not a lot of people can connect with. I've never cannibalized anybody. I can definitely understand her struggle with herself to keep herself guarded because of so many things that have happened to her and having trust issues with people. And over the course of the series, allowing a person in to be, a friend at one point and then just into their relationship, I can understand that.
Jason kind of cares a whole lot, so there wasn't like a huge mindset that I had to go into other than just being kind of like concerned about a situation that's going on, or concerned about how something or other might affect Amali, or how it's even affecting himself if he's learning something new. With Urswick, it's less situational and more, how can I get across to someone that I'm smarter than they are? What is like the silliest but also most sinister way that I could say this line? Something that's both entertaining, but something that will make the audience like hate him more than they already do.
When he is the advocate, I would say he doesn't really have a quote-unquote personality. He's just steely, determined, a little brooding, but just focused on the job. Beneath the armor, he's a person, but, when he's on the clock, so to speak, he's just the advocate. There's no room for anything else. He doesn't accept failure. He has a job to do and he's going to do it. Advocate was more of a fun to experiment with and try to get that right. Plus, the advocate is just fun to play. I like playing the bad guy. That was fun. I just wish I would have won.
She's just a really fun character, and I guess I can relate to her a lot because she spaces out a little bit, which is what I do a lot. I'm like, oh, what was my train of thought? Describe the light personality-wise. Describe her a bit like me. She's kind of there. She's kind of living in the moment for the most part. She's there to have, fun, but she has her responsibility, and when she gets serious, she's serious, you know. I think some people have this idea of just like, oh yeah, you get a microphone, you sit down, you look at a script, and you read your lines, and it's not that at all. I think a lot of the time I do rely on a lot of visual medium to like come across when acting and stuff, and like you don't have that with voice acting, so it all has to be in the voice, you know?
Your voice is all you have to convey what the character is feeling. You don't have visuals or, body language to go by. To inflect your voice and to get those emotions across and portray all of that is what you have to push your voice to do instead of just talking as you would your normal speaking voice day to day. Anytime I sit down to work on a new session, I try to implement something new that I've picked up on, whether it's how I enunciate a word that I'm not so good at pronouncing, or trying to convey an emotion a little bit better because I'm weaker in that department. I try to put something new that I've picked up along the way into every new performance. That way I feel that it could be better for the next time, which leads me into the next thing of make each line or project better, cleaner, more involved than the last. To just try and come full circle with everything, so everything just sounds good and you learn along the way.
So the most important thing is drink water. Actually, I was really surprised to find out how dehydrated you can get. When you're sitting down, kind of talking, it's always different kind of tonal shifts. It's not always the same, so it's very different from just having a conversation with somebody. Especially doing Urswick, you get dehydrated very quickly. I always thought that voice acting came naturally to me, but I was surprised to find out that when I started this series that there was so much to learn. As with anything, there's always something new you can learn, like how many different ways a line can be said, kind of learning to be as as concise as you can, not really taking too many takes, because at that point then the line that you're reading, you start to lose what inflection you were going for, or if you say it too many times, you learn to hate the line itself just because you're just like, I don't want to say this anymore.
I've never taken voice classes. I've never had any prior experience, so I'm totally a rookie, or I was when I came into the project. I've just been kind of learning on the go. I learned how to filter my voice since I did all of that myself. The pitch modulation. I think I just enjoyed the process of teaching myself and then, learning on the go and, being flexible with the voice and kind of playing around with it.
Writing the music for the series has been an absolute pleasure. When we first started, I had only really been writing music for a little over a year. It was very rudimentary, very basic, and it was definitely not anything I had invested a large amount of time into. But when we were talking about doing the series, I remember it was a coincidence that I was working on this little song, this little melody, that I intended it to be this kind of sneaky, almost like a playful theme. There's pizzicato, which is typically associated for some reason with sneaking around or movement or things like that. And then obviously the main piano part. And we both were like, hey, why don't we use this piece for the main theme of the series, or at least use it in the series. I think it became the main theme as a result of how catchy it was. It's been a ton of fun, and the best part's definitely been improving over time. And I think that's going to be a main theme, as everybody talks about it, is the improvement over time. But specifically with editing, I know at the beginning I didn't really edit much. It was mostly kind of just creating visual aids to accompany what we thought at the time was more of a podcast. But it became clear very quickly that it was a series. Editing is slowly just becoming animating, which I couldn't be more happy about because I'm very enthusiastic about animation, and it's something that I've been wanting to learn a lot about over the past few years. So it's serendipity really that I get the chance to do that on The Last Lamia.
And I suppose watching the progression of the series as well, that was a lot of fun. Kind of going from the more static images of the beginning to like what we see in the ending, which is like we have animation, we have lip syncing, you know, and like the artwork just kept getting better and better, and the music, like it was just wonderful to watch this progression and stuff. It was really cool.
When Amali's mother was getting burned at the stake, and Jason kept Amali from seeing it, just holding her, I think that would be my ultimate favorite moment of his, just because, you know, he cares about her so much, and, you know, he knows exactly what it's like to lose, you know, not only someone close to you, but, you know, a family member. Yeah, I would say that was my favorite moment of his.
If I'm not wrong, I think it's in episode 8, and it's where she's admitting her wrongdoings to Jason. I think that's a very strong thing to be able to do from a person that is typically very guarded and not vulnerable. So showing that vulnerability and admitting her wrongs to Jason and showing remorse and all these things that you don't normally get to see a character go through. It's just like, oh, I'm wrong and I stay in the wrong and that's my arc. But she acknowledges that her treatment of all humans isn't equal, and it's not right to apply that to everybody.
I'm a sucker for the emotional payoff, you know, you've been with these characters for years now, and that ending just, it's so sweet. I loved it a lot. Big fan of, like, the Ancient Egypt flashback, mostly because I like that whole aesthetic and stuff, and I'm just watching it like, ooh, I like this. I really dig this. I'll watch a series about this.
I mean, there's a lot to choose from. If we're going from, like, behind the scenes or comedic elements, you know, I'm always going to love the Fiji gaff or the, you know, just some of those little silly, you know, things that we caught in post or didn't catch in post that were hilarious. Some of the lines that we talk about that just kind of going back on it just kind of make us laugh a little bit. Laughing, I like to laugh. I like to laugh with friends. Those are some of my favorite moments.
I remember just that excitement and that like, oh, but what if this happened? And then one of us would come up with something that we really both liked, and that would be the thing that would make it onto paper. But we were just throwing out countless ideas, and the story almost wrote itself, really. Like, until you got to the more complicated flashbacks and things that needed to be woven together more carefully, the story really felt like it was writing itself.
Writing each episode has always been kind of a struggle. To me, what makes a good script is as long as there's something happening in the episode, not only new information, but something that almost like engages the audience a little bit. Just something happening to propel the story forward, like kind of engage the audience, give them something that not only what you think they'll like, but something that you like as well. You just want to stand up and go, yes! I'm glad it happened!
I think as a voice actor, you have to have some minute ability to connect with some character. It doesn't have to be an overall blanket of, oh, I feel this character is within me. No, it's just more so, I think in order to get your performance across as authentically as you can, that you have to have some sort of emotional backing for yourself to make it come across so strong.
I've had an absolute blast doing the series.
It's definitely helped me creatively, both in voice acting and in writing. It's made me feel more confident in my abilities. Yeah, I would say it's helped me tremendously, just in a way of, you know, believing in myself.
I've never heard you voice act. The voice that you came up with for Urswick, you know, that was something that was, I didn't know you had that in you, so That was pretty awesome.
Eventually, you run up against a wall where you're like, how much more can you really improve? But we surprise ourselves every time because we find ways that everybody comes in with their maximum effort and gives us an episode that always tops the last episode before it. I didn't know where we could go after 10 Part 1, but the finale proved me wrong. We were able to go even further.
Fantastic voice actors, fantastic people who have helped us out throughout this series, and I'll always thank them all for their help and their friendship.